Following consultation between the chief constables of the West Midlands and the Devon and Cornwall forces, the latter force has been asked to undertake further inquiries into the allegations made by Mr. Clark.
It's the same old story. Get the police in to crawl all over the evidence and discredit the witnesses. I've never heard an inquiry called the same day a case is referred. At least that's original.
So, more policemen.
Well, there were bruises underneath the eyes. Their faces were puffed out. There were physical changes.
At that time, I was approached by the Word in Action team at Granada, the programme, to ask if I would be prepared to give them an interview.
And I recall the question of whether these men were armed just didn't enter my head. Point is this, right to the...
You got this one? Timetable of interviews.
Someone will know what it is.
Brought some tea and biscuits. How do you like yours, Jerry?
Have you heard these two have got religion?
Aye. They call him the bishop.
Here, Gareth, you better tell us what we're supposed to do here, because I'm not going to sit around all day with these bastards. Whose nick is this, anyhow? I'm still travelling. Is it yours? Might have known. Shite house this is.
No way, Paddy. You're upsetting the bishop there.
I think the lady's waiting to speak.
I'd just like to say one thing before we start. We have to be realistic. As far as this appeal is concerned, you're guilty until we prove you're innocent. It's not like an ordinary trial. The evidence is given to 3 judges. There's no jury. I ought to say that in my experience, an appeal court has an extreme dislike of cases that have been referred as a result of media campaigns, especially television ones. When the time comes, I think we should fill the court with observers. We need all the help we can get.
I'll ask Nelson Mandela. He sent us a postcard the other day.
Well, don't ask Reagan. I've written twice. Still waiting.
We've had one piece of luck. The police have discovered a record of the times each of you was questioned. It didn't surface at the trial. I think you should study it closely. For some reason, Superintendent Reed has a note of an interview he claims didn't happen.
Now this one. Saturday afternoon. They read me out what the holy man here is supposed to have said. I done the pubs. Billy shite your trousers power. And then it was back to the lighted cigar in my eyelids. That's the time I gave it the trial. He's crossed it out because he says I confessed in the morning. Well, I confessed to nothing. And I want someone to get that Reed in the box and ask him what he's playing at. And if no one else wants to do it, I'm going to do it myself.
We don't get to speak, Paddy. The barristers do the talking.
Sure, Paddy, you've got a good enough case without us. You weren't even at the station on time.
No, it's the 6 of us or nothing.
Dear God, we beseech you to guide the judges of this court and to bless the efforts of our barristers. Amen.
Amen.
Right, Mark.
My lords, the question being posed is whether among the many victims of the Birmingham bombs, the dead, the injured, and the bereaved, may not also be counted these men, who would have spent 13 years behind bars as innocent men, while those truly guilty will have gone free.
Richard.
If that is so, the miscarriage of justice will have been one of the gravest in recent times.
No sign of Nelson Mandela.
All rise.
The learned judge, in his summing up, made a number of comments about the enormity of the allegations made against the police. He described their alleged misbehavior as a conspiracy, which, if true, was unprecedented in the annals of criminal history. He observed that if one officer from the whole lot had reported the matter to some senior officer,
Mrs. Lance.
to an independent force, or even to the press, the gaff would have been blown.
How did the prisoners look?
Very worn out, tired, sort of very rough.
Did you see any signs or marks or injuries on any of them?
No.
I'd been hit. I'd been hammered. I'd been made to sit. I'd been made to stand.
Mr. Clark, why did you leave the police force?
I was charged with the theft of a £5 note from a prisoner.
And after hearing your evidence, did the jury convict you?
Yes.
And what do you say today about whether or not you were guilty of that offence?
I was not guilty.
Now, Mr. Clark, it might be suggested to you that the reason that you said what you have said about events in November 1974 is that you are motivated by a desire to vilify the police.
Absolute rubbish.
Did you feel angry at having been convicted?
Yes. Of course, my lords. Yes.
And angry and bitter with the police who prosecuted you?
No. No, my lords. No.
Sir, do you really should maintain
Just a minute.
Bittered copper exacts revenge on his former employees. It's odds on you'll read that in the papers tonight.
What about his evidence?
That's ridiculous. I mean, 13 years on, the guy's going to forget the odd detail. The point is, he says he saw guns and dogs. I wonder if they're going to allow George Reed the benefit of a bad memory.
Well, at least he has the advantage that he wrote everything down on paper.
Mr. Reed, what you were doing at the time of the interviews, you are playing around on a piece of paper to make the interviews fit together. And later, when we come to Hill, you were trying to work out when it was going to be suggested that Hill had confessed. Do I make myself clear?
You make yourself plain, but that is not true.
In other words, you were fabricating the evidence at the time of these people's arrests.
Could you, for my benefit, I'm sorry to be so dim, explain what it is you are suggesting this witness did arising from the document?
This document was being prepared for a number of reasons. Now, the first reason in relation to Hill was that the officers had to work out, and carefully work out, when it was going to be suggested at the trial later that Hill had confessed.
Wait a minute. When it was going to be suggested
That Hill had confessed, or rather had made admission